Hello and welcome. Today's book review is going to be on For a Good Time Call by Jessica Gadziala. Last week I did a review of the Malik Brothers series by Jessica, and I had mentioned that I thought Hunter and Fee had their own book, but I hadn't found it yet. And one of you amazing people commented under that video to let me know what book it was. So I read it, and now I'm going to review it for you guys. It was honestly probably the darkest and the heaviest of all of the series. I'm kind of glad that I had read all of the rest of it first, because I really was interested to find out what was going on with them, but I don't know that if I started with this book, I would have continued on, just because I would have assumed the entire series would have been this heavy. For a Good Time Call is actually the first book of the Scar series, and this series just includes Fiona's story and her brother Isaiah, and then you go to the Malik Brothers series, which is why I couldn't find this when I had read that series. Jessica has a ton of books on Kindle Unlimited. I mean, probably close to 50. So if you like this series, if you've read this series, I would absolutely recommend you go on there and read the rest of them, because she's an incredible author. The beginning of the book starts with Fiona cutting herself. Now, I don't think I mentioned it, but we had an idea that Fiona was a cutter because I want to say it was mentioned, I don't remember which book, but one of the other ones does mention that Fee used to cut. So I knew that that was coming. I had at least a suspicion that that was going to be covered in her book, but it goes so much further than that, and I want to talk a lot about her backstory, just because honestly there are some people that may not be able to handle it really well. And I mean, I thought it was an incredible story and something that needs to be talked about, but that doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to feel that way. Fiona grew up in an extremely religious household, and I say extremely, and I want to point that out because these are extremists. They are not just in general people who have religion. These are people who take it just completely too far. Anyways, so Fiona grows up in a house where instead of living in the main home with her grandmother, her father moves them into a shack that he built in this forest behind his mother's home. And him, his wife, and the two kids, Isaiah and Fiona, live in this little shack. The father is abusive but uses religion to cover it up. So one time Fiona tells her mother that her hair is beautiful, and the next time she sees her mother, her father had chopped her mother's hair off, like sometimes down to the scalp, and the mother wouldn't, she flinched every time Fiona went to speak because she was afraid what this little girl just trying to be nice would cause her husband to inflict on her. It's a very hard thing to see, because the truth is that happens in the world where people unfortunately go to extremes and cover it with religious purpose. Every religion, not just Christianity. Her father using these extremist views. At one point when Fiona was 10, and I believe, and her brother was 12, they shared a room. They had a sheet that went down it, and her brother had started opening it when Fiona was changing. Her father saw this one time. Her father thought the best course of action was to drag his daughter, naked because she had been changing, out of the house where it was snowing, carve the word wicked into her pelvis, and then slash up under her chest. The mother actually lit the living room on fire to save Fiona from continuing to get cut, because she didn't think the father would stop. Anyways, it's obviously a very gruesome story. This is going to be, now she's an adult, she's escaped their home. The father, the brother, the grandmother will all be part of the story. Her mother has since passed away, and you'll hear that story. I only tell you guys these spoilers because, as I said, some of this stuff might be a little hard to take. The way that Jessica writes Hunter and Fiona's story is that Fiona lives in her apartment complex, and then this handsome man moves in next door. Their first meet is really adorable. I'm not going to tell you guys about it so that you can read it for yourself. But eventually, Hunter is remodeling his apartment and making a lot of noise. Fiona just barges into his apartment and steals all his hammers because he refuses to stop working in the middle of the morning. And Fiona stays up really late at night. She has a lot of issues that basically all stem from her childhood. So we talked about her having the word carved in her, and that's going to cause issues for her sexually, because she doesn't want people to see the word carved in her, and she thinks that they're going to think something about her. And then she has a hard time being alone in the nighttime, so she ends up going out drinking into bars until the sun comes up, so she's not really asleep until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And then she works all day answering phone sex calls. And Hunter has this really bad impression of her because he hears all this and doesn't know that she runs a phone sex operating business. So he thinks that she's having all these different men in her apartment. It causes for some really funny, interesting dialogue between the two of them. The truth is that for as dark as this is, I think that Jessica wrote them to have an incredible story. At the very end, you're going to cover Hunter's story with his brothers and father. I will tell you that I thought the father was a lot more human in the rest of the series. This one, he definitely seemed more of a loan shark mafia guy than he did in the rest. And part of that is just the way that he kind of handles Hunter, because apparently Hunter had just ran away. Instead of talking to anybody or letting anyone know that he was unhappy, he thought that the only opportunity he would have to get away from that life is if he just left. Now, that obviously doesn't sit well with his loan shark father, but what confused me about that part was Eli does basically the same thing when he gets out of prison, but his father doesn't react the same way. Hunter gets beat up and Eli doesn't, and I don't know why those two stories are different, why Eli wouldn't get beat up also. Not that I want him to, but I mean, I don't understand why in the father's eyes those two things were different. Maybe because Hunter left their house or his house and business and just ran, where Eli got out of prison and just didn't tell anyone and ran away. I'm not sure. I kind of wish that maybe in Eli's story there could have been just something about how the father wished he would have treated Hunter better, and so he's treating Eli better. Something like that, you know. Overall, incredible story. I think that Jessica's an insanely great writer. And it goes to show, because these are not books that I typically would be interested in. I'm not somebody who reads books about girls being carved up and continues to enjoy them. And so the way that she balances all that horror with the incredible light of what life is now and how hard Fiona has worked and this love that her and Hunter are going to have, there's obviously going to be some back and forth between the two of them. The way that she kind of wraps up the story, and a lot of it you're going to know, because if you've read the Malik Brothers series first, and I don't know, I kind of feel like that's the way to do it, because unless you're really okay with all the heavy stuff, for me personally, I think reading the Malik Brothers series first, then this book to kind of wrap it up and give me a complete picture was the best way to do it. And that's not typical to want to read the books out of order. I just think that it worked well for me. I hope that you guys like the series. It was just incredible. Jessica's an incredible author, as I mentioned. All of this is available on Kindle Unlimited, the entire series, and so many more books by her, guys. So check her out if you have it. If you have any questions or comments, leave that down below. If you want to subscribe so you get my videos every week, subscribe. Thank you all for joining me, and I will see you again soon.